Hello, Marukitos. In this section, we'll be talking about the labs pertaining to ECE 2031. So, my first tip is to be as comfortable as possible with Quartus. So, you definitely want to know how to make schematics and understand them, and simply how to connect them across many wires, as it will get more complicated in the future labs. And you also want to know how to format it correctly, as that will be very important in the lab reports. So you don't want to get points out for not having a title block and not having these grid marks. So another thing is that you want to know how to use these tools as stated in the labs. So sometimes they will tell you just to go to a tool and they assume that you already know how to use it. But in the beginning of labs, they will walk you through and they will really show you step by step what to do. So just be comfortable with that and just practice that. So I think the most important thing is to understand the system hierarchy. So you will have eventually files within files. So this schematic is very simple, but it will get much more complicated, like I said. And so each component can be its own file later eventually. So you will have, like I said, you will have files within files, and you will also have a master file which contains everything in your project. So now the next tip is become a master with your lab equipment. So first of all, within the first 2 weeks, you will want to get this breadboard. You want to get a really big breadboard because you will need to put at least 4 or 5 IC chips on it, like this picture. So for ECE students, I'm assuming that you've already used this breadboard in a pre-req course, at least 1 or 2. But I know that there are many CS students who have never had experience with the breadboard before. So you really need to pay attention to what the lab manual has on that. Or you can look online, or you can also look on my webpage, as I will have some tips specifically for students who have not had much experience with it. So here's a picture of what your lab station will look like. You have a computer, and you have this D2 board, which is the main focus of the class. It's probably the most important thing. You will be working on the FPGA, and you will implement circuits on it. So this is an oscilloscope, which will allow you to analyze waveforms of your circuits and to see what they're actually doing in terms of power and voltage. And you will also be able to do many more measurements, as I will talk about in a later section. So now, this is the logic analyzer, which is it's much more simple because it'll help you see what states your lab or your state machines and your other circuits are currently in, which will be much more simple than the logic analyzer. No, much more simple than oscilloscope. I'm sorry. Make sure that you understand VHDL. This is not like any other language you ever used, because you're not programming software. What you're doing is describing hardware. So here's an example of what it looks like. At first you would think it's very weird, and you might think it's a little ugly actually, which kind of is, but you have to make sure you understand it, especially for the later labs and for the lab practicals also. So like I said, it's not like anything you've ever used before, because it will compile in parallel rather than sequentially. Although you can force it to work parallelly, but that's probably not one of the best ways to do it. You want to think of it as mostly sequential. So for VHDL, you want to look at the examples in the lab manual or in the textbook, as there will be plenty of those in there. However, the textbook examples might be a little too overwhelming for someone who's never used VHDL before. So I recommend this website at nineline.com, as they have many simple examples that really help you understand and walk you through what you're actually doing in VHDL.